Hi! Welcome to Independent Clothing Initiative, a sewing channel. I am so happy you're here today. Today we're going to talk about buttons! Buttons!
Buttons!
Sewing on a button isn't rocket science, but maybe your buttons keep falling off. Or maybe someone in your house keeps coming up to you, a significant other, a teenage child, asking you to do their mending. Today, I'm going to show you how to sew on a button so it won't fall off. Also, look in the description box below for a link to a printable on how to sew your own buttons. There are 3 main kinds of buttons, but 2 are very similar in the way that you sew them, so we're going to cover those 2 today, but I'll show you all 3. First is your 4-hold button. These are called the eyes of the button. Then you have your 2, your button with 2 holes in it. And then you have a button with no holes and a shank on the end. Do you see that? Okay, let's get to it. The first thing you need when sewing on a button is a shirt. Let me show you what I'm working on. This is my most current make, Sinclair 1693. No, is it? It's Simplicity 1693. Button placket. We're going to mark our buttonholes, sew on our buttonholes, and then we'll get to the buttons. And like magic, she's done. Well, not done. We still have a button to sew on. I've already sewn on these 4 buttons and left this one off here on the bottom. Let's start with the shank button. The things that you need when you're sewing on a button. Okay, to start, we take our thread. I cut approximately 22 inches of yarn, or to make it easy, about my arm's length from here to here twice. A trick is to wet the eye of the needle instead of the end of your thread. Push it through and double it over. Now I will tie a knot in the end of my thread. Depending on the fabric that I'm using. If it's a looser woven fabric, I will need to tie it off more times. To make a bigger knot as to not slide through the fabric. Okay, so now we have our thread, our needle, and our thread. It's tied off, and we're going to take our button with the shank, meaning it has no holes on top. Here I have already made my garment. It's completed except for this final button. So I will measure. You can use some kind of a ruler, or my favorite way is this expandable gauge where I can measure how far apart the buttons are. This is what you would do no matter what ruler you're using, and how far from the edge of the placket you want to mark your button. So I've already done that. One of my kids stepped on this, you guys. It's a bummer. Okay, so here I have the hole already marked. So one trick that you can do is to mark both sides of your placket. You can either do this by adding in a little stitch, or I like to poke my needle through and just mark it on the other side. I'm going to come up from the back to the front of the garment and pull the thread taut. One more time. One small, I just catch the fabric in my with my needle and pull it back up. Then here we have the shank hole on the button. Pull it through and do that same thing, down and up, and pull it tight. This will secure and flatten your button to your garment. Okay, now after you've gone down and up, you go through the shank hole on the button and then down and up. These two movements, just barely catching the fabric down and up and then through the shank hole of the button, are the two movements that you will repeat anywhere from 4 to 6 times depending on, again, your garment. So down and up, pull it tight, and then through the shank. When you're going down and up, you are not going through the shank. It's just under the shank. Down and up. Okay, when you have done that, like I said, 4 to 6 times, your button will be secure. I'm doing it one more. This is the button that my littlest will pull on. And you go back down near the end of the shank. You go back down to the back side of the fabric. We do not need to wrap the thread around the bottom shank as it already has one. We don't need to create one. Then that same down and up movement where you're just barely catching the fabric, and this time before you pull it tight, when you still have this loop, you put your needle through the loop to create a knot. Now we find our scissors and we cut off the tails, and there you have it, a secure button. Yay! I'm so excited. Doesn't this just scream fun? Now that we've finished our first garment, let's move on to our second. Okay, last and final garment, you guys. I am so stinking excited, and I cannot wait to be able to wear them. Let's go. This is a Kalle shirt dress from Closet Case Patterns. I absolutely love the silhouette and made a few small tweaks to make it a little bit more me. Okay, today we're gonna sew on this one right here. Last one, and then I can finally wear it. Final garment. I have unbuttoned either side of the button where I will be working with here, just for greater ease of getting in and out of the garment. I'm taking my thread. I've done 2 arms lengths, like this, and again, and I will cut it off. It works every single time. Tie a little knot down at the bottom. I will tie about 3 knots just to be sure that it won't slip through the garment. Although there are many methods that you can use without tying any knots. But today we'll tie a knot. Okay, now one of the most important things to do when you are sewing on your button with holes is to make sure that you are sewing it on so that the holes are in the same direction. Here I've done all of my holes in somewhat of a diamond pattern. That is how they look. They're going up and down this way instead of square across the front of the button. So I need to be sure that I'm sewing my button on in the same direction for all buttons. Okay, so I have already marked, using my ruler, the front and back of the button. Another way to do it is to just go through and make a little X where you want it to be. That way you don't need any marking pen. But we're not going to do that today. Okay, so I have gone through the front side of the button. This is only because I want to reduce bulk in the back. So there will be a knot in the front and a knot in the back when I'm done. I've gone through and I will stick it through the first of my buttonholes and pull it tight, bringing the button down to the bottom of my garment. I will need to hold the button in place while I do this. So I make sure that I center the button over my marking, and I've come up through the button and I will go back down on the same side of the fabric. But the holes that I'm doing are opposite of each other. So I've done one set of holes, and now I will do the other set coming again from the same side I just came down. I will come up. I might need to poke it through and peek like that, and then come through, pull it tight, and go back down the same side I just came up. So you're always working from the same side. Now I'm on the back side. I've done one complete stitching through both sets of holes. Now I go back to that first set of holes that I was doing. Pull it. I'm in the front. Go back down. Opposite buttonhole. Pull it tight. I'm going to do this a total of 4 to 6 times. Okay, when I have finished, my thread is coming out the back. I'm going to take my needle, come back up, but not go through any of the holes. I will come back up close to the threads at the bottom between the button and my placket. This is my placket space here, my interfaced section where I will be sewing the button. Okay, so I've come up between the two, and now I will take my thread and I'm going to wrap it around 6 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Making sure to pull it tight. This is creating a shank like we saw on our other button by wrapping it 6 times. A thickness between the button and the placket, so that this side can fit between the two and lay comfortably. The side with the buttonhole. Now after I've gone around 6 times, I take it back where I came up, I go back down to the back side, again not going through any of the holes, and now just like I did with my shank button, I'm going to go up and down, just barely catching it, and through the loop.
Up and down, barely catching it, through the loop. One more time, barely catching it, through the loop.
That's 3 full times. I've now created my knot in the back, and all I have to do is cut the tails. Ta-da! I'm done! Then, of course, when you finish your garments, what do? I don't think my kids are going to invite me to any dance parties. I don't know why. I just think my kids call me a weirdo. Thanks for watching.